Clay had to run because he's going to the Super Bowl. But don't worry, I'm going to hold the fort down with the assistance, of course, of the one and only Karol Markowicz of the Clay and Buck Podcast Network. She does a great show. She also teams up with Mary Catherine Hamford. Normally, this is on the Clay and Buck Podcast Network. You guys will love the show, especially for the moms out there. Karol is the mommy podcaster extraordinaire. Karol, welcome. Welcome back to the program.
Buck. Thanks so much for having me. I
going
can't believe I'm not going to get a chance to make fun of Clay's mustache.
I know. You're going to have to come back. Hopefully he's not going to wimp out and grow the rest of his facial hair back because the mustache is it's like Clay stepped in a time machine and we have 1975 Clay right now. It's pretty awesome. Your piece got my attention, as it always does. New York Post here. To end transgender madness, make the ghouls who push these surgeries pay the price. We talked about this in the opening of the show, the $2 million award. But, Karol, I think this is critical, that people that push the trans surgery and mastectomy and hormones on adolescents get sued bigly.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that this is the only way to really end this insanity. People forget that for so many years, not only was this all pushed on the rest of us as the normal thing to do, sure, cut off the breasts of a healthy teenage girl to make her pretend that she's a boy. That was something that not only was the medical profession telling Americans was the right thing to do, but if you dared to disagree with this in any way, you were a bigot, you were anti-trans, you were a terrible person who wanted to see dead kids. So this win draws the line in the sand and says no more of this. And in my column, I highlight how many kids, had this kind of surgery. The HHS puts the number at around 3,700 American adolescents in just 4 years. So it's a really crazy large amount of numbers of kids who went through this serious surgery. But then there's so many more kids who did things like breast binding or took hormones and have their lives ruined forever. And the people who did this to them should be made to pay.
I just had a conversation yesterday, actually, with a Floridian who I was talking to him, and he does some house flipping and remodeling and stuff like that. And I said, why'd you move down here? And he said, honestly, the breaking point was at my school, my kid's school, rather. They started pushing the trans stuff, and he was in, I think, 5th or 6th grade or something. And he's like, I had to just say enough is enough. And I moved down here to Florida, where, of course, they don't do that stuff in the schools. Thank you, Governor DeSantis.
Right.
But even like Megyn Kelly pulled, and she's been very open about this. She talked about it on her show. She pulled her son from a school that was like the rival school to the one I went to in New York. So kind of hit close to home because they were doing like the trans, coming out day stuff for kids in primary school.
Yeah. What's really crazy is how prevalent it became in places like New York City. And it was very much a geographical question. Like, depending on where you were, it mattered for whether this kind of thing was going to hit your kids or not. My daughter, we moved when she was in the middle of 6th grade. We moved from New York to Florida. And she would have, in New York, she had, I would say, close to a dozen friends who in some way called themselves trans. Maybe they said they were non-binary, which was kind of the easier way out. Or they declared themselves the opposite gender from what they were. When she got to Florida, there were none, zero. She has not encountered this at all. And that really goes to show something. It was a nationwide social contagion, but it really only caught on in certain areas. There was this kind of jokey line about it at the time in like 2020, but it was like, there's no trans kids in the hood. And that was the thing. It wasn't happening everywhere. It was happening in these far left enclaves that allowed this to happen. And then it was seeping into red areas also. But a lot of times parents in those areas were putting a stop to it.
Karol, one thing that you also detail in your New York Post piece, and I think it's just so important that people know about this, and it goes to how disgraceful all this stuff was, and it is these procedures that they put sometimes kids through. And I actually think this stuff should be illegal for adults as well, because I think these are not medical procedures. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
We're talking now about non-adults. We're talking about minors. And some of these procedures, even things like chest binding, which you get into here, is can deform these young girls and give them lifelong pain.
Yeah. Yeah, and what was so crazy about, again, that era where we were all made to say that we would support this kind of insanity was that it really did grip so many different kinds of people. You know, when Bethany Mandel and I wrote our book, Stolen Youth, it was published in 2023, so we were writing it in like 21, 22. We had to, when we were talking to conservative publishers, they were saying to us, we love the book, conservative publishers' book, we love the book, but we need you to cut the trans chapter. And that was, even in the conservative world, you weren't allowed to say that was having serious, serious damage on these kids, that it wasn't a joke, that it was a real thing that was happening, that kids were having body parts cut off. And of course, the left goes through that thing that they do where it's not happening, but also if it is happening, it's a good thing. And that's where they are right now. They're in a situation where they've pushed for this, they allowed this to go on, and now they have to say that it's a good thing that they've cut off the breasts of healthy teenage girls to help them pretend that they're boys. But we all know that it's not, and I think that this kind of court case, winning this kind of court case, really goes a long way to showing who's on the right side.
You know, I have in my forthcoming book, Karol, which I will say Karol has been a very important source of encouragement in my book writing process, Manufacturing Delusion. And there's a whole chapter on menticide, which is what a psychiatrist and an army psychiatrist in the Second World War who actually dealt with a lot of SS Nazi prisoners. He was Dutch. He came up with this term of menticide, Mirlu, and it's the destruction of the brain. And one of the key things is to get people to affirm really obvious and grotesque lies. Like that's a central part of this, and this was obviously true in the Soviet Union as well. To me, there has been, and this is why I talk about the trans stuff in the chapter on menticide in the book, there has been a transgender agenda that is menticidal with respect to how they insist that people say the most insane things, or they will go crazy and sometimes even become very violent, as we know.
Right. You have to say the words, and you have to say them in the right way, and you need to parrot the line that the left is feeding you. We also had this in our book because it's a sign of totalitarianism. It's what totalitarian societies do. They push one note, one voice that you must speak with, and when somebody doesn't, when the J.K. Rowlings of the world step out of line, they're shunned in such a really nasty, horrible way that they're really taken out of their own society. It's a really terrible situation, and the fact is that we're getting to the point where we could see who was right and who was wrong, and that's really what we want to be hoping for here, that this kind of thing comes to an end, that children aren't mutilated anymore, that this kind of thing isn't pushed in our schools, that we come to believe that you cannot change your birth sex, that you can dress up as however you want, you can call yourself whatever you want, but 10,000 years from now, when somebody digs up your bones, they're going to know what the DNA said, and that's going to be that you were either a boy or you were a girl, and that is the end of the story. And there's no compassion in lying to children that they could change that in any way, and having them try to change that has been a grotesque experiment, and I hope it ends.
Well, I think that's such a critical point. They have used the idea of kindness. They have used the ideas of kindness and courtesy as a weapon against those of us who wanted to protect children. It's just be nice, use the pronouns they want. Just be nice, encourage them in this belief. Just be nice, give them the hormones and now this is for the parents particularly, take them to the doctor that'll give them the hormones, that'll bind their chest, will do these things. It's actual cruelty. They offer cruelty and call it kindness, and I think that is central to the whole trans experiment.
Absolutely. And they tell the parents, if you don't do this, your kid will kill themselves. And that's really just one of the things that parents, they'll do anything for their kids, right? And if they're told, like, would you rather have a live girl or a live daughter or a dead son? Obviously, every parent would want their child alive. But they've kind of cornered parents into this where they had to accept a ridiculous reality that was never going to be in order to say, oh, this is how your child survives. And they really put parents through the ringer.
I'm glad that there's this lawsuit that happened, though, because I have been concerned all along, Carol, and this is going to speak right to you on this issue, that it would be a little bit like the aftermath of COVID, when
Yeah.
somehow no doctors, no
Hmm.
hospitals, no health policy people, no one in the government, no one just
Yeah.
lied. No one abused us for power. Nobody was responsible, even though we know that's
We
all a
know.
lie itself.
Yep.
In this case, because of the legal system we have and tort law, I do think individuals can be held responsible. I don't think they're just going to be able to do yeah, so what if we told you needed a vaccine passport and that was insane and totally useless?
Right. You're right. Usually people are not held accountable for terrible things that they do to society, but this is hopefully going to be the change in that. And again, this is so far beyond the pale. Not that I didn't think that the COVID regulations and things that they did to us were also horrible. I did, but the cutting off of healthy body parts, I think, is just something that we need to, again, the line in the sand that we have to say that this is just something that we cannot societally accept. And the fact that this is the very first win of a court case like this that went to trial, I hope the floodgates open after this, and I hope there are many, many more.
Do you think that, have you ever talked to a parent that seemed otherwise to be relatively like normal and with it,
Yes.
who was a big believer in this trans ideology stuff
no.
in school?
No, but what I was going to say is a lot of people think that parents who have kids who declare themselves trans are uniformly leftist or uniformly crazy. I knew a family in New York who had a child who said that they were the opposite gender, and they were this very normal family who you would never, they definitely weren't encouraging their kids to do anything crazy. They definitely weren't on board with any of this. But they literally had to move. They had to leave the state because their child's school was saying you have to affirm this for your child. This is elementary school. This is while my kids were in elementary school. And the fact that the school was pressuring them to affirm their child, there's so many normal families that get caught up in this. I think a lot of conservatives just think it's like blue-haired, nose-ring families that this happens to. This happens in a lot of places, and a lot of people are susceptible to it, and you have to protect your kids.
Who wants this stuff?
Right.
It's why I know that we can throw out some things. We see these crazy activists, but it's fascinating to me that whenever you push on any individual politician on this, they start speaking around. They pull a Gavin Newsom. They start speaking around the issue. They speak in platitudes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They've used so much power to force this on us, and yet no person who can be held accountable will actually stand forth and subject themselves to debate and argument on this subject.
Yeah, I really do think it's a leftist destruction of the family. When you have your kids be broken down in this manner where they don't know what gender is anymore, and they can't be sure that such a thing exists where there's only a boy and a girl and that's it, I think that it really does target the traditional family. And in a larger picture, it targets the country. It's an anti-American measure. It makes everybody a little crazy. And I know it sounds like, why would they do this, or who would do this? But look at the activists on the streets right now. Their cause of the day doesn't matter. Every cause is basically the same people out in the streets. And the point is to bring down the country. And I know that sounds lofty and like, why, that can't be what they're really thinking. But all of these steps, all of these breakdown of institutions, of familial binds, all of this is the same thing. It takes its roots in places like communist Russia, where I'm from, where they did the exact same thing, where your family is not your family. They're not supposed to matter to you more than the random person on the street, and the country comes above all, and you're not allowed to have religion, and all of this. It's all one leftist push to change the way our country is, and we can't let them have it.
Totally agree with you. Great piece in the New York Post. Guys, go check out Carol's show.
Buck.
She does a great job. The Karol Markowicz show, and also Normally, which she does with Mary Catherine Ham. Carol, my friend.
Thank you,
Talk
Buck.
to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Energy is critical. Energy is essential. And you need to have the right underlying chemistry in your body. If you're going to get the most out of your day, you're going to stay focused, you're going to have drive. Gentlemen, I've been on a health journey, and I started to get really run down, got too chubby, got too slow. I've turned things around. I'm still working. Don't think that I feel like I've accomplished the mission. I'm like halfway through. But proper supplementation has been critical. And I get my supplements from Chalk, CHOQ. In fact, the Chalk Male Vitality Stack, which I take, is a multi-supplement bundle designed to support men's vitality, energy, and healthy testosterone levels. The CEO of Chalk's a personal friend of mine and Clay's, based in Texas, all-American guy. He cares so much about what goes into these products because he is truly passionate about this. He wants to help all of you guys and gals out there. They have a female stack too, but I can tell you, he takes all this stuff himself. He is a true believer in these products from Chalk, and so am I. Go check him out. Go to chalk.com, CHOQ.com. Subscribe with my name, Buck, as your promo code, and Chalk will pack a free $99 bag of Chalk Lit Powder with your first delivery. That's chalk, CHOQ.com, and use my name, Buck, as your promo code.